call our meeting to order tonight. Renata, if you do the roll call, please.
English.
Here.
Evans. Ettinger.
Here.
McEvers.
Here.
Gookin.
Yes.
Miller.
Here.
If we would rise for the invocation, we have Pastor Mark McWhorter from the Church of the Nazarene here tonight.
Bow with me in a word of prayer if you would. Our Heavenly Father, this evening I am thankful for your word that tells us how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell together in unity. And so tonight for this meeting, Father, I pray that there is a spirit of unity among the people here, God. I pray for wisdom for our city and community leaders as they make decisions that affect the citizens, God. May they have the best interests of the citizens and the community in mind. I pray for your spirit of unity to prevail in this place this evening, that you would guide this time, we ask. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we do have an amendment to the agenda tonight. How would we add that to the agenda?
It was actually posted timely, so you don't need a motion, but
Okay.
if you would like to, you may go ahead.
Okay, so we do have an amendment that we'll get to under other business, so that's been taken care of. We'll now move on to our presentations. We have a proclamation. Is Liz Montgomery here tonight? Liz, come on up, and then I'll read this, and then I'll present you with this proclamation. So this is a proclamation proclaiming October 2018 as Safe Sleep Awareness Month, and I have a proclamation that I would like to read. Whereas sudden unexpected infant death is the sudden and unexpected death of an infant birth to age 1 year, in which the manner of death are not immediately obvious prior to investigation. And whereas SIDS is a subset of SUID and remains the leading cause of infant death between the age of 28 days and 1 year. And whereas the tragedy of SIDS can happen to any family regardless of race, ethnicity, or economic status, and whereas evidence-based research has proven that when babies are placed in a crib alone in the parents' room on their backs on a firm crib mattress with a fitted crib sheet and in a smoke-free environment using no crib bumper pads, pillows, blankets, quilts, or stuffed animals and toys, they will sleep safer with reduced risk of SIDS and other cause of infant deaths. Whereas during the month of October, the Inland Northwest SIDS Foundation will hold special events, including Run for the Angels and distribution of safe infant sleep educational pamphlets and sleep sacks and cribs for families in need, thereby providing the best opportunity for all babies in Coeur d'Alene to survive. Now, therefore, I, Steve Widmeyer, Mayor of the City of Coeur d'Alene, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2018 as Safe Sleep Awareness Month. Thank you for taking on this very important challenge. I'll bring this proclamation to you.
Absolutely. Thank you. On behalf of myself and my board of directors at Inland Northwest SIDS Foundation, we want to thank you, Mayor and City Council, for taking our proclamation and approving it. We want you to know that we will honor this proclamation with the work that we do here in the City of Coeur d'Alene. We also want to thank you for mandating all of our licensed child care providers here in the City of Coeur d'Alene to take our Safe Sleep 101 class. It shows we're the only city in the state, we are the only city in the state that mandates that. So congratulations on that. And please know that we work really hard to reduce our infant deaths here in Idaho and in Coeur d'Alene. In the last 3 years, our SUID rates, so our accidental deaths and our SID deaths, have been historically the lowest 2 out of the last 3 years in the entire state. So thank you for your support, and with our foundation, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Liz, and thank you for all the work that you do.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it. Thanks. So we'll move on to public comments. This is an opportunity for anyone that wishes to address the council shall have 3 minutes to do so on public business. And we have a gentleman that'd like to go first because he needs to catch a ride.
Okay, I'm going to try to get it in 3 minutes. If I can't get it in 3 minutes, I'll come back in 2 weeks. So my name is Matt DeRyan. I grew up in Coeur d'Alene on 4th and Foster. And in 2015, I became severely disabled. I'm disabled today. I'm on Social Security. I worked as a professional my whole life. I'm over 50. I'm homeless. Starting November this year, I finally found a place to rent for $550 a month in North Stevens County after dealing with about 4 years of homelessness, living with friends and family in tents and sleeping out when I could. The reason why I was homeless in part had to do with physical injuries that were caused that had anything to do with work. Okay, so I'm going to cut to the chase. In 2017, I received good news after bouncing around, being homeless, staying with family and friends, and out there, you know. It was hard. I'd never been homeless before. There's an organization here in town I'm going to mention in a second. They were kind enough to take me in for 2 years in their transitional housing program. I was elated. I was crying. Within 3 months, I ran from that program because I discovered it was infested with drug dealers and drug users. In fact, this is what I have to do when I come to Coeur d'Alene. I grew up in this town. But I have to be incognito. I have to be incognito. I'm serious. I had drug dealers in that program that thought I was a snitch and a federal agent, probably because I'd never done illegal drugs, and I look pretty clean cut usually. I did surveillance on them because my life was threatened. They were harassing me, following me around, calling me a snitch. And so I started listening in. I started taking down license plate numbers and watching because we had people coming in and day out at 204 East Garden, using drugs and dealing drugs. After I got too many things stolen and my kids were visiting me and all this, I started listening in. I took down names and license plate numbers and I turned it into law enforcement and I fled. In July of 2017, I went to South America, I went to San Francisco, I went to Seattle where my kids live. Mostly I stayed out of here. I came back for court business and for medical reasons, and I stayed homeless, semi-homeless, because I had help at least. Why am I up here today? This is a community public safety issue. I support St. Vincent de Paul. I'm a Catholic, born and raised. I'm also part evangelical Christian, and I'm also part Jewish, all of that. So I'm doing this for St. Vincent de Paul and for the community. Their transitional housing program, there are two facets. The veterans program, where they do drug test people, and their non-veterans transitional housing program called Angel's Arms. They don't drug test people. Very little supervision. I was in that program, and I had to flee once again. I'm going to say this. I'm going to sue St. Vincent de Paul because for the last year, as a practicing Catholic in good standing, I've asked them, after I fled, I said, would you please help me move my belongings? I can't be here. There are drug dealers in Coeur d'Alene that are after me because I turned them in to the police because my life was in danger. St. Vincent de Paul kept giving me policy answers. Oh, it's not our policy. That's not our policy. I said, I'm disabled. I can't drive. I need my belongings moved out of Coeur d'Alene and out of state to Spokane. They would do nothing. I threatened a lawsuit a year ago. They've done nothing and nothing but cover up, and it pains me because I'm a practicing Catholic. So I'm going to sue St. Vincent de Paul, but I'm bringing this to your attention because it's a public safety issue. For many years, I donated to St. Vincent de Paul, and I actually helped to deliver meals in San Francisco to homeless shelters. So I believe in St. Vincent de Paul, and mostly they're good actors. But there are some subversives in that organization higher up that really, when it comes down to it, I don't see anything Christ-like about it. When you come to the organization and say, hey, this house has been taken over by drug dealers and people are coming in day and night using and dealing, and I gave them names and numbers of the dealers and all the drugs they had there and all of that.
Okay,
So I'm running out of time.
Yeah, I'll have to stop you there.
That's good.
If obviously, if there's any law enforcement issue, that should be reported to law enforcement.
Yes.
And you know, St. Vincent de Paul is a different organization from the city. We appreciate you coming here today.
I appreciate it.
And best of luck to you.
I just wanted to get that on record, and I will say that I did turn it over to law enforcement, and whatever they do behind the scenes, that's great. But for the citizens of Coeur d'Alene, think again when you donate to St. Vincent de Paul, make sure that they're not allowing drug dealers to take over these programs, because I'm telling you, that's what, in some instances, that's what happened. And I'm doing this for the good of St. Vincent de Paul by speaking out. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
All right.
Okay.
Anyone else wishing to come up to give public comment tonight? Not seeing that, we will move on to announcements. Any member of the council have an announcement tonight? Don't see any council announcements. I have a number of appointments. These are student reps to all of these various committees, so I'd be looking for council action on appointing these student reps to city committees.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'd move that first we appoint Michael Hoffman to the Ped Bike Committee, who I don't think is a student rep.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second to appoint, we don't want to do them all at once? You want to do them separately?
Well, I don't know, can we do the students along with the other?
You can make one motion.
Sure, so let's do Michael Hoffman, who's not a student, to Ped Bike. And then let's do Isabel Bartosh to the Library Board, Jim Kennard to Park and Rec, Ronan McLaughlin to Ped Bike, Joseph Morrison to CDA TV, Isabel Bradley to the Arts Commission, and Jaden Estep to the Child Care Commission.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Wood, you have the consent calendar tonight?
I do. I'd like to move to approve the consent calendar as presented, including Resolution 18056.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Eddinger,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin,
Yep.
English.
Yes.
Motion carried. Now we'll move on to our added item tonight under other business. This would be rejection of the bids for the Memorial Field Grandstand project, and Bill Greenwood has a report for us.
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
Bill?
As you will know, we went out to bids for our grandstand project, and it came in $200,000 over. So we're asking you to reject and give us the authority to go seek a construction manager similar to we did at City Hall. We also are in the process of talking to some of our partners to acquire a little bit more capital to help with the project, because we believe that some of these add alternates we'd like to do will come in a little higher than the shortfall of $200,000. So with that, I'll have any questions you may have about that.
Questions for Bill? Woody?
So kind of my first question is, we seem to keep hitting the wall on things like this. We put it out to bid and it comes in high, and I know you're trying to find some more money and a different methodology. Is there could this be kicked down the road? I mean, is this gotta happen? It's probably...
It certainly could. If, you know, we delayed this to look for a better bidding climate this fall. We didn't get that. Actually, let me back up. We might have gotten that, but the prices weren't as good as we'd hoped. If we waited a little bit more, we might get some better prices next year. The field itself is ready, just the grandstands isn't. So I've already spoken with my team and the college. If we had to wait some on construction, we could put some bleachers over along the third base side for the spectators. I've been toying around with how we would create a dugout for home team. We might be able to do something in the grandstands themselves without having to add another element within the field. Because we did that, the plan in the grandstands right now has that home dugout kind of inset into the grandstand itself, so it would stick too far out in the field of play. First base running for a fly ball, right field coming in, the same way, it'd be a problem. So maybe we could do something to put the home team in the grandstands with some stairs onto the field. So there's ways that we could make it work if we wanted to wait a little bit for what we thought might be a better bidding time.
So thinking along that line, though, is if everything went the way it was supposed to, or we'd be awarding tonight, when would it be done? Would it be done for the next season?
We would, well, what we'd hope to do is get it far enough along where the contractor would have the seating area itself ready. And then they would be doing all the underbelly work while the restrooms wouldn't be there, the concession stand wouldn't be there, but the field would be playable, and they would work towards that. We're getting such a late start that I don't believe that we'll be able to do that at all. That's why I was just talking about these other options.
Gotcha. So the grandstands, you can still sit in them? I mean,
Currently, you can,
Right.
yes. Yeah,
Okay.
the only thing that we've Yeah, we haven't done anything inside there at all. The only thing, like I said, we'd have to do is for home team to have a dugout somewhere, and I think there's a way to do that real easily.
So I guess my comment on that is that when we had talked with our partners, North Idaho College, and they agreed to kick in $150,000, I think they had some expectations as far as moving forward on it. I don't know the wood if things are going to get any cheaper. To be honest with you, if anything, they would get more expensive. I would like to keep the momentum going. I'm good with rejecting this bid, but I would like to keep the momentum going of getting this project completed.
And Your Honor, what that does for us is we would get it done just later after their season's over. We'd still have to do some things. We might be able to get that grandstand ready for them to have the dugout. It's just that we're getting a late start, but I agree with you. The momentum's good, and if we can get our partners to help us a little bit more, that would be great.
And if it comes where you're going to contract with someone, that contract would come back to council for approval.
Well, and the other part of this, and I'll expound a little bit more, we've had some people talking to us that are going to be helpful in this process. The Idaho Forest Group has contacted us, and they're interested in helping with the lumber part of that. If we were going to go and select a contractor, they may not be so willing to have some lumber possibly donated for the project. With our construction manager, we can put that up front. We have the quantities that we know what those are. Idaho Group now is looking at it, and the number that we had gotten back from what the estimates might be from Gibbs Lumber was on the top side of $100,000. And so they're not saying they will contribute all of that, they're saying they'll help, but there's some help there. I've also spoken with electrical contractor, and he said some of this stuff, it may be over-engineered. We might be able to save some money there. So this negotiation we do with this construction manager, I think we can come real darn close and do a really good job with a little bit more help from our partners and ourselves.
But you'll bring that plan back. Once you get that plan solidified, you'll bring that back to council for them to, everybody to take a look at.
Correct.
All right.
Just one other question. So how much more, you're looking for another 300, 400?
300, I think, is a comfortable number in that even though we were 200 short, that just doesn't carry us very far into the overall project, because the overall estimate was 1.4 and some change. And we only have $1 million from Ignite and $150,000 from the college. And then those ad alternates, we all contributed, Ignite and the Parks Capital Improvement Fund contributed that. So yeah, we felt more comfortable trying to seek as much as we could so that and that doesn't include any change orders.
Right.
And so we're just trying to give ourselves just a little bit more.
So you're looking for about 100,000 from our three partners, us, NIC, and Ignite.
Correct.
That seems reasonable at this point, huh?
Yeah. Well,
Momentum?
yeah.
is the
We'll
key
have
word.
to wait and have Bill bring back the plan. Kiki, you had
So, yeah, Bill, I just wanted to make sure, you're looking at a CMGC program, and then you'll bring back to us what the start date, the contract days, and the scope of work, including the new partner, all of those contributions in another presentation that we'll approve, including who the CMGC is, right?
Correct. And so what we were asking this evening is for rejection and your blessing to go and advertise for that individual, that company.
The CMGC, okay.
Any other questions for Bill? Dan?
But it seems like we might also be asking for more money, too.
Pardon me?
Aren't we also asking for more money?
Well,
The motion is just to reject the bids and to go with the contract manager, general contractor, but are you also asking for more money?
thank you. Yes, I guess I am.
Well, but we can't.
In a way, so we're
that's
looking
not
for
No, we
money
can't ask for any money tonight because we don't know what the
We
ask
don't know
is.
what it is. I am bringing that up as, a possibility. So we're still seeking from our partners, and I believe there is some interest from my commission to help some more. I've talked to Troy about it, and there may be some help there as well, so we could, here within the city, find our portion of that 100 and then ask our other partners how much they would like to help as well.
But that's what's going to be brought forward in the proposal.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
Well,
we can discuss it.
Well, let's hope that the solution we're passing tonight is the one that will help us manage. I mean, this happened with City Hall, too, and we were able to get that done. Same thing, bids came in high, but you get a general contractor, they're able to do the
Some
deal.
negotiation, right.
Right.
Right, and that's what we're hopeful for.
Okay.
Any other questions for Bill? If not, we'd be looking for council action.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move to reject all bids for the Memorial Field Grandstand project and direct staff to move forward with the CMGC selection process.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you,
you.
Bill. We will move on to our public hearing for tonight. This is A2-17M zoning prior to annexation of 48 acres from county industrial to city C17, commercial at 17 units an acre, and 46 acres of Spokane River navigable water located at 3074 West Salty Way. Applicant, City of Coeur d'Alene. And as part of this process, does any member of the council have a conflict of interest?
I am employed by the applicant.
Okay, so noted. Any other conflicts? of
Oh, I'm
interest?
employed by the applicant.
We're all employed by the
I
applicant.
think- So Hillary,
All
take
right.
it away.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you. So you kind of already explained why I'm here. I am here presenting the annexation request to you on behalf of the City of Coeur d'Alene. So all legal notices were met. We did post the site and some other locations, actually 4 locations as shown on this map here. We did that prior to the Planning Commission hearing as well as to the City Council, just to make sure there was adequate notice. We were over 200 individuals that would have needed to be mailed, in which case our city ordinance says we can't mail, so we have to do the publication in the paper, and then we notify by posting the site additionally, and then we also notify others that have expressed interest. Also did the publication in the press as noted here.
That's, if you just expand on that, so we have to notify everyone like within 300 feet, is that what it is?
You would do that, but in our code, if that number is more than 200 people, then you're not to mail. You're only to publish in the paper.
Okay.
And then we took the extra step to post the site and surrounding properties and to notify others that had requested that.
Thank you.
Sure. So a little background, the city, obviously, we've been working on this for about 1.5 years. The city officially purchased the site in May of this year, and we are calling it the Atlas Waterfront, as you all know. And there's great opportunities with this. This is the reason you have decided to purchase the property. There's the economic development potential and, of course, the access to the river and the shoreline for the public. And those are all high priorities in our CDA 2030 implementation plan. We have, since once we started kind of this process, we created a web page on the city's website. You're all aware of this, but just for the public, we have a page and some other embedded pages that are dedicated solely to this and updating the community. So that's on the city's website under Atlas Waterfront, and then there's also an Atlas log that has detailed information. So this request, we had gone to Planning Commission a year ago, and then we waited to come to council till we had done a little bit more of the design work and the financial feasibility work with our partners at Ignite CDA. And a couple months ago, we realized we should probably bring in a portion of the Spokane River as well, because we need to do some shoreline restoration, stabilization. We'd also like to have that option to have some docks for kind of the public to come and do some mooring, to go to some not only the green belt, but also some of the commercial uses. And then also, we recognize it's important for fire, police, for emergency services, and also for consistency with code enforcement. And then by bringing in a portion of the Spokane River also allows for more continuity with the city limit boundaries. So it now will extend up to Mill River and then also down by the US 95 bridge. So we'll have an area that's within the river that is continuous. So as I mentioned, we have had 2 hearings with the Planning Commission. The first one was just when we were looking at C17 zoning, so that's the commercial with the 17 units per acre. And then we just recently went back to Planning Commission with the inclusion of the navigable water request for zoning along that portion of the Spokane River. And those were both unanimous support. Also, one of the things that's critical for us in moving forward is this timeline and partnership with Ignite. And so I'll show you on the next slide, but there's a very aggressive schedule which we're trying to meet for all of these components of annexation, of having this become part of the city and having the zoning in place, and also moving forward with creation of the Atlas District and expansion of the lake and the river districts. So this schedule, it's very small, so you can't really see all the details, but the areas that I have here circled in red are showing kind of the annexation and zoning process. And that, as I mentioned, already went to Planning Commission. You're the last step in that. And then up here also is the other components. So next, after this annexation process, if all goes well this evening, we'll be bringing forward to Planning Commission, then back to City Council, the urban renewal plans for the Atlas District, for the creation of the new district, and then the expansion of the other districts. And then there's a bunch of other moving parts and pieces. So location map, just to make sure everyone's clear on what we're looking at. So the Atlas Waterfront project is here in gray. And then this blue line that goes from the city limits line, which is here in green, all the way down here past, this is the 95 bridge. So this is the section of the shoreline along the Spokane River that would be annexed in as well. This is the Atlas Waterfront property up close. And this is just showing a little bit of history on the site. So a photo from 1999 showing when it was in operation as the Atlas Mill. And then here it is with our site boundaries. So part of that Atlas Mill extends over into what's now the River's Edge property. Here's the annexation history map. So again, the subject properties here. You can see there's a variety of different dates. So all of these that show the number at the end, that's the year in which it was annexed. So this parcel here was in 2014. We, the city, annexed in the former railroad right-of-way in 2015. River's Edge was 2013. Then there's some others. Some of the, this other property owned by River's Edge was 2011, Riverstone, 2004, 99, et cetera. This is annexation history map showing some of the navigable water zoning. So the most recent one was here with Blackwell Island request for the marina over there, and then this was for the Blackwell Island RV Park in 95. So existing zoning, we are currently zoned county industrial. And then this property to the north of us, which is owned by River's Edge, is C17, and then it has an approved special use permit with the R34 residential density on it. And then to the west is the commercial 17, and then the residential at 12 units per acre. And then as you can see here in the Riverstone area, it's largely C17 with the planned unit development overlay, some R17, and then commercial to the north with some PUDs and some light manufacturing. Existing zoning, again, as I mentioned, just wanted to show you where we already have the navigable water zoning within the city limits, and so this would create that continuous navigable water zoning up to the extent, the western extent of our city limits. And proposed zoning, this evening we're asking for the C17 for the Atlas Waterfront and then navigable water for the shoreline. And then I wanted to include this slide as well. This is something that Welch Comer had done when we kind of started this effort with Ignite CDA to look at what's appropriate for the Atlas Waterfront and how we want to develop it. And so this shows surrounding residential densities, and it's maybe a little hard to see there on the screen, but it's really color-coded so you can kind of tell what is showing here. So this one is showing actually more of the requested. So this is showing the R34 that Lance Douglas and the River's Edge group is requesting, but these other ones are showing the existing. So here, this just to the west of the River's Edge site, this one is more of the 8 units per acre. That's kind of consistent with some of these greens. Lower densities are 3 units, but then you jump into 12 units per acre. We have this orange is the 17 units per acre. The pinks are all 34 units per acre, and then this red, in this case, normally red is commercial, but in this map is just residential. So this is greater than 34 units per acre, just so you can see what already exists in the area. And then the gray is commercial zoning, and then the blue are park. So for an annexation request, there are 4 findings that must be made, and so I'll walk you through those 4. The first is that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. And so we have our 2007 to 2027 comprehensive plan. This site is within the Spokane River District, and you can see that here outlined in white, and it's within the transition area. And so the Spokane River District, a lot of the properties have been mill sites that have been converted into mixed use or residential areas, and so that's consistent with what we're looking at. And then transitional areas are areas that are expected to change greatly and also that they need to be developed with care. There are 4 goals that relate to this request, and so those are here listed. I won't read them all other than just the title. So the first is related to the natural environment, second is the economic environment, third is the home environment, and fourth is the administrative environment. And then there are 28 comprehensive plan objectives. This is all in your staff report with the full verbiage for each of those, but just so you can see all of the objectives that really tie this project to the comprehensive plan and show compatibility with that. And so a lot of the things we're looking at doing, the waterfront development, parks, connectivity, open space, partnerships, economic and workforce development and business enhancement, et cetera. So this is another component of the comprehensive plan is the shoreline areas. And so this map really just shows the shoreline zone within the subject property. The turquoise is the 150-foot shoreline boundary, and the 40-foot is the no construction area. Although, as you're aware, when you do a planned unit development, you have more flexibility. You could do docks, you could do the shoreline restoration and other improvements. So a couple other things in addition to the comprehensive plan that relate to this request that support it. The council in 2013 formed an ad hoc advisory committee. It was a Spokane River Corridor Advisory Committee to look at the development and some of the changes along the river, knowing that this is kind of our last area of undeveloped property along the river. And in 2014, the City Council adopted a resolution basically directing staff to move forward with helping to acquire and maximize public acquisition of riverfront property and to do comprehensive planning for the river corridor. And then there are also 6 related action items from CDA 2030's implementation plan, and I'll just read those by title as well, but those are environment and recreation. There's 4 under that category, and those are really related again to the open space preservation, recreational lands, parkland expansion and public beaches, and then there's some related to growth and development, and those are related to preserving view corridors and having lakefront and riverfront public access. The next finding is that public facilities and utilities are or are not adequately available for the proposed use. So city staff from all the different departments reviewed this request and provided feedback. Each of them have indicated that there are public facilities and utilities available, and they did have some comments, I'll show you on the next slide, just related to how the project as it moves forward would need to develop. So Streets just commented that, you know, the site is currently undeveloped, we know that, and Celtice Way was recently improved. Also for sewer, just really noting what's in the sewer master plan and that there is a sewer surcharge, and so that would be applicable when the site develops in the future. So that's nothing to be concerned with, that's kind of standard because of the area that it's within. Celtice Way revitalization, these are some updated images just showing all the work that's gone into Celtice Way and that it is fully functioning at this time with all the improvements, including the multi-use paths and pedestrian crossings, so it's multimodal. Wastewater master plan, so this is speaking to that comment from wastewater that we received from Mike Becker, is kind of showing the infrastructure that is in the location, and so the plan is that the site would start with the phasing on this end and have to tie into the wastewater infrastructure to the west. Trails and bikeway master plan, this shows the site and some of the surrounding trails. We have some new trails here along Celtice Way, as we mentioned, and then by acquiring this former railroad right-of-way, we've provided for that opportunity. Of course, now that we have this Atlas waterfront, we can shift that alignment slightly. And then this blue dash line, this is really for water trails, which is more for paddling or water recreation. Finding B10, that the physical characteristics of the site do or do not make it suitable for the request at this time. This is really just showing the topography of the site. We all know that there is some grade change. I believe there's about 50 feet of grade change from Celtice Way down toward the river, but that also provides great opportunities for the site to be developed and take advantage of the views. Floodplain map, this is again just something that needs to be evaluated. The only area that shows within the floodplain map is this inlet, and that will be, I believe, redesigned with moving forward with the project. So a couple of sites, I'll just kind of skim through these quickly. You're all familiar with the site, but from different vantage points. So this is the Riverstone area. This is the Prairie and Centennial Trail currently looking south toward the river. This is looking south toward the river as well, kind of some of the mine remains, or sorry, the mill remains. Again, some of the mill remains, and then this is Atlas up here where the roundabout is. Currently, this fence is delineating the river's edge property to the west. This is looking up at the Stimson office site, kind of the bench to the north of the site, and Celtice Way is behind that. Looking toward the river, here's the former railroad right-of-way through that. Again, here's the fence view of River's Edge property to the west. Another one looking back kind of southeast. And then this is the former railroad right-of-way up close and the inlet that I just showed on that floodplain map. And then the last finding is that the proposal would or would not adversely affect surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and/or existing land uses. And so the comment here is from City Engineer Chris Bosley, just saying that we don't expect it to adversely affect Celtice Way with regard to traffic. There is adequate capacity, but we are working on a traffic study right now. So you're all aware of that. So this slide just shows we did have an open house. There's an online feedback map for public to comment on that. The draft of this traffic study is due out in November and the final report in December. So generalized land use pattern, this is really just showing what exists now. So this beige is vacant properties, yellow single family, gold is duplex, in this case it's actually multifamily, red commercial. And then a conceptual plan, this doesn't lock us in with annexation, but just so that it's clear what's being looked at for the site. The numbers are the phasing, so the order of the phasing for the project. This blue area is not marked as phasing. This is kind of an optional to be determined after the traffic study is done and if council and Ignite are interested in pursuing that or not. That's really just been shown on some of the plans and is not part of the project.
Is that Tilford Lane?
That is, yeah, generally kind of an alignment of that, but it doesn't show the full thing because it's just conceptual.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So annexation of the shoreline with navigable water, I already explained why we've included that, so I think that's pretty clear.
That was one of my questions on this northwest zoning. It's
Navigable water.
navigable water.
Yes.
It is through the property to where? All the way down?
It's, I'll have to go back to that one map.
Map looked like it went all the way down.
It goes
to
from Mill River, so the western extent of our city limits, all the way along the shoreline to just south of US 95 Bridge.
And by doing that, it makes it so we can do what?
We can enforce our codes, we can respond with police and fire, and we can do shoreline restoration work. And on our site, we can do, if we want to do a dock, things like that, so we can make improvements. We still have to comply with the other agencies with their requirements.
So folks further down the river, could they do docks?
They would have to go through the planned unit development process if they don't already have them.
Okay, thank you.
It's not just a given, it's more just, that's the only zoning we have for navigable water.
Hillary,
Yep.
sorry, while you're on navigable water.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that the border for the city limits around the rest of the city limits on water is like 1,000 feet. So where is this 75-foot?
Just for this request, the difference is that those are part of the lake. And so the river, when you look at the state statutes, we can only go 75 feet out from the low water mark. And so that makes sense. We were looking at, only going to maybe halfway into the river anyway, but 75 feet is plenty.
So that's a state thing,
Correct.
and that's what the other, okay,
That's the difference, correct. So the other areas are part of the lake, and so we can go further out.
okay.
So as I mentioned, the navigable water, really, that's the only zoning you can do in the water, so if that makes sense. It really provides for us to do all the things I mentioned, and then it still, as it notes here, this is from our code, we still have to comply with other applicable agencies' requirements and permits. C17 is a broad spectrum commercial, and it also allows for residential uses at a density up to 17 units per acre. And then as noted here, really the guidance is that it should be located adjacent to arterials, and Celtice Way is that. We did receive a public comment from Chet Gady. Actually, we received two. We received one last year, and then we received another one again this year. Same general comments. This time asking that the annexation agreement, when we bring that forward, includes a statement that basically says that the shoreline needs to be forever owned by the public for the use and benefit of the public. And then there are 17 suggested provisions that came from the Planning Commission meeting based on staff comments and public testimony. Those are included in your staff report. I won't walk you through those unless you would like to kind of see the detailed list, but those are for your consideration. Staff will come back. We don't have an annexation agreement before you tonight, so we'll come back based on your direction and present that to you. So your decision point this evening is basically the city of Coeur d'Alene is requesting from the city of Coeur d'Alene to annex in 48 acres plus or minus of property commonly known as Atlas Mill Site with C-17 zoning and annexation of plus or minus 46 acres of Spokane River along the shoreline with navigable water zoning. And your action alternatives this evening are to approve, deny, deny without prejudice. There's also a secondary request because time is of the essence. We're also asking you to approve the Council Bill 18-1024 in order to meet the necessary time frame for annexation.
Questions for Hillary? Woody?
Hillary, if, for right now, it's county industrial.
Yes.
If we didn't annex, what could happen there? Do you know? What is county industrial?
It's just largely, I think, just, I mean, you could, I don't know all the uses, but just more of the industrial things that you would see. I think you could see someone out there, I
A
don't know.
mill site?
Yeah, I mean, I think they could do things like that. Landfill,
Probably something similar to the industrial park off of Atlas.
yeah,
Something
I
similar
think you're
to
right.
that.
Yep,
You know, where waste management is out there.
yeah,
Oh,
thank
that'd be
you.
pretty, wouldn't it? Just kidding. I'm just kidding. Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions for Hillary? Dan?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so I have, I read over the staff report, and you may have already answered some of these, or they may be answered elsewhere. I just got to say, general comment, I am nervous about the PUD process, because that doesn't come to us. So is it entirely possible that we annex this in, we do a PUD, and we'll never see it?
Well, we can certainly have it be something if the council would like to see it. I think the plan is to do a PUD and to get input from interested parties and bring it to the Planning Commission for the approval. That's the normal process, is it would stop at Planning Commission. This is a unique situation. If you wanted to see it, maybe you wouldn't officially approve it, but maybe until you get to review it and until we enact the annexation agreement, maybe it doesn't go into effect, something like that, so that you can still direct changes. So it's really up to you. The annexation request allows you to be kind of flexible in process, but ultimately a PUD still is approved at the Planning Commission level.
I'm just concerned because a few years ago, we annexed in the Forest Service Nursery, and council asked for a 150-foot setback. And then when it was all said and done, it was an 80-foot setback. And that somewhere in the machine, our 150-foot setback that we asked for was peeled back. So I have a concern that we may be asking for things now. If we don't see the PUD, we have no clue if anything we asked for has been undone. And so that's my concern. That's why I'm bringing it up. In the dialogue here between, on the Planning Commission minutes, it came up again, and I think I brought it up about the C-17 zoning. It seems everything's C-17. We have one zone in the city, it's C-17. And the comment was made that the R1 zoning would scare off a lot of developers. But I thought we were doing this for the public. So tell me again why we're doing C-17 and not R1, and what R1 would be with a PUD.
So R1 is one residential unit per acre. So the concern with that is that we can't go forward with urban renewal plans. We can't make anything financially feasible if the council decides R1 is the appropriate zoning. That's your base density. So C-17 gives you the density and ability to do mixed-use projects, and then the PUD allows us to kind of set those parameters, to lock it down, so that we know what kinds of uses, we know the density, we know what we don't want to allow. We can establish design guidelines and other development standards specific to the project. R1, you are so limited that I think that would derail the process and the timeline, absolutely. And it's also, then we'd have to go through further steps to do the zoning, again, to rezone it again. So what we thought was the C-17 makes a lot of sense, making sure that we establish that the council says, we want this to have the planned unit development, these are the kinds of things we do and don't want, which is why you have the 17 items listed for your consideration for the annexation agreement.
Okey doke. Said that in the annexation agreement might include a position stating that the PUD needs to be developed for the entire site that would build in some flexibility if some of the parcels were sold. What does that mean about the PUD The annexation agreement will have a provision stating the PUD would need to be developed for the entire site. So is that, so the PUD would be in the annexation agreement then?
It would not be in the annexation agreement, but it's a requirement of the annexation agreement, so.
That a PUD be done?
Correct,
But the PUD wouldn't be done at the time of the annexation agreement?
correct.
Okey doke. And how does a PUD work with a shoreline ordinance?
So the PUD allows for modifications to the shoreline ordinance, so that allows for us to do docks, it allows for us to do shoreline stabilization, to have public access points, rather than just leaving it undisturbed. So that's what a lot of these developments have done along the river, so that we can have docks and boardwalks and landscaping and other things. Of course, we're working with the tribe and the other agencies to make sure that the shoreline stabilization meets all of the desires of those agencies, regulatory agencies, as well as making sure that it's going to meet our needs to have public access.
Okay, and the shoreline ordinance is prohibiting encroachment upon, even by development, right up to the water, but also height restrictions. So does the PUD repeal those?
The PUD allows you to modify them. It doesn't outright repeal them. It just allows you to say, we want to vary some of those things. So that's correct. So you could say, instead of, minimizing your height to 32 feet, although you're going to be well beyond that setback for anything other than the one commercial pad, which
Okay.
I'm not sure where that falls within the 150 feet anyway.
Okay, and then the 17 points, I've gone through a bunch of them. We talked about the shoreline ordinance. What is number 8? It says, consider specifying minimum acreage of land to be set aside that will create permanent jobs. How do you do that?
So this was one of the ones we talked about before, so to establish an area within the Atlas waterfront to say that this is for job creation, so that instead of it just being, a restaurant pad or residential, that it is for a pad that we can work with Jobs Plus or the EDC to say we want to recruit certain businesses to create jobs on the site.
Okay. And this says, specify the plat will need to show the 40-foot and 150-foot shoreline setbacks of all properties subject to the shoreline regulations unless modified by the PUD. So we go back to PUD, my favorite three-letter acronym here. Planning Commission, number 11, the Planning Commission recommends restricting any residential development along the shoreline from and including the former railroad right-of-way, not including the spur south to the river. So this is what Mr. Gady was talking about.
Correct.
Okay. But he was talking also about making that property owned by the city in perpetuity,
Correct.
public in perpetuity. So that's how that morphed into,
That, his last comment is, let's see, 16.
that's the next one I highlighted. The Planning Commission recommends that the annexation agreement include a provision that the shoreline remain in public or ownership. But it doesn't have any setback listed on that. So what is the shoreline? I mean, is that 40-foot, 50-foot?
Well, I think the planning commission was letting it be council. These are all just suggestions, so the
Okay.
council can make that determination. So you could say it's consistent with the area that's a green belt, designated for green belt.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Woody?
So along those same lines, those 17, what do you guys call them?
They are suggested
Suggestions.
provisions for the annexation
So-
agreement.
If we adopt this as it stands, those 17 come along with it?
We'll basically take this all into consideration based on your guidance this evening and your direction to staff, and then we'll come back with an annexation agreement that morphs these in under the appropriate sections of the annexation agreement.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions for Hillary? All right. Oh, Ron, did you have something?
When's this traffic study going to be taken?
So it's being drafted right now. The draft will be done in November, and the final report will be done in December.
Okay.
All right. Well, we'll probably have some more questions for you a little
Yes.
later. And we will open the general public comment portion of it. Troy, do you have a sign-up list for us?
So how bad was the traffic, Ames?
Terrible.
to come in
Mr.
on your
Mayor, we
motorcycle?
really need to do something about the traffic out there.
I have
I apologize for my tardiness. I've been in the car from the Spokane airport to here since about 4:45, so I apologize.
just as a heads up, I have invited Glenn Miles of the KMPO to come and address council on traffic issues. He'll be here in December.
Nice.
Maybe.
If he can make it.
He can get here.
All right, so on this list of people that would like to testify, we have one name on here. Mr. Gady is in favor of it, and he would like to testify.
I knew you would have questions for me, so I came.
And Renata's going to swear you in, Chet. We're going to be
Swear
formal
me
with
in.
you. Yeah.
Can you please raise your right hand and affirm the following statement? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
So this has been a long journey for you folks since 2013, when you started buying railroad property and getting involved in the river development. And I think it's great that you stayed the course and you stayed right on track. And if you accept, as Mr. Gookin was pointing out, the Planning Commission's suggestions for the annexation agreement, this will probably be your first legally defensible statement about the shoreline's going to stay in the city. And I'm really glad to see that. And Mr. Gookin, to answer your question, a year ago when we came forward and said it should be from the railroad to the shore and that should be public. And then Ignite started doing things. In some places it went further inland than the railroad, and other places it wasn't as far as the railroad. And it all depends on planning. So we thought it would be simpler to simply say the shoreline should remain public. And if we keep that shoreline public, it does the same thing. We didn't need to say for 432 feet or anything like that. And if you restrict the residential from about where the railroad spur is, again, that solves the problem of having all the houses parked on the river and we can't see them. So I think that that's a great plan. I love the annexation of the Atlas site. C-17 zoning, I think you need for your flexibility. And so I'm up here to give you a bunch of kudos, but I can't leave without giving you something to think about. And Woody, you came up on the shoreline, and so we're going to annex the 75 feet of water. And we're going to do it for shoreline stabilization. That's a good thing. Who can argue with that? And we're going to do it for public safety. That's a good thing. If somebody wants to put a floating restaurant or a floating rec center there, you'd like them to come under city codes and do what they want. If a bank robber's escaping there, you'd like the police to be able to go get them. So that's a good thing. The thing I have questions about are the future docks. And when we say future docks here, we know what we want. There have been public hearings. Public hearings said we don't want a marina. We think it would be really cool if you have a restaurant, a third place, a restaurant, and there were some public docks there for a couple boats when people are eating. That would be a really good thing. Didn't want a marina. So if we do this zoning of NW, and how do you not say Northwest when you say NW, navigable waters, what does that mean for future projects? Right now, the Planning Commission has a PUD in front of it, and one of the pictures of the envisioned development shows 12 docks coming out into the water. At the end of each one of those 12 docks, there are 4 subdocks. The way I look at that, you could be putting 96 boats moored on those docks. I'm not saying that's good. I'm not saying that's bad. I will say it's a very nice looking picture. My question, and hopefully through your due diligence you can find the answers to this, is will this navigable water zoning make it easier for council to have a say about those docks, or will it make it harder for council to have a say about those docks? One of your possible solutions is you could go redefine what navigable water is. Right now, it seems to me that it is very general. Anything that's normally done on the water you can do in NW.
Well, I can normally have a dock on the water. So does that make it easier? And then we hear that maybe it's the Department of Lands or the tribes or the Corps of Engineers or other people that will make the real determinations on the docks. Well, if the city has navigable water approving every normal use, then if I was a developer, I could probably go to those agencies and say, city has no problems with it. The city might have a problem with it. So be careful with the navigable water on what that does to your authority in the future to say what happens along the river. I'm not trying to tell you what to say. I'm just saying, make sure you keep the power to save it. So, again, good job on the Atlas site. I love it. I love it that when you adopt all the Planning Commission recommendations, you'll have a legal basis to say we're protecting the shoreline for the public. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chet. Chet was the only one that I had on the list that wished to testify. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to testify? If not, I will close. Well, no, I will have Hillary come up before we close the testimony part of it. And maybe you can address a little bit of Chet's questions and challenges to the council to look at that navigable water zoning. Maybe explain that a little
Certainly. So someone would still need to go through the planned unit development process to do docks. So just by having navigable water along the shoreline doesn't mean that they can have docks. They still have to go through that process.
And if the city is the owner of the shoreline, they would be the one that would be bringing any proposal forward?
Correct, on our site.
On our site, yeah, yeah.
So that does preclude anyone else from secondary property having a dock?
Right, so they, well,
You have to own the
within
property.
a site? I mean, it's, if you own the property, you can have a dock. So,
The
but you're
city
right.
owns the property, was what the mayor said, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Woody?
So I was thinking about, so we don't have Northwest now. We haven't had it, navigable waters. So all the developments that's gone along the river from 95 south that have docks and walkways now, we had nothing to say about that. Is that correct?
South or north?
North, I'm sorry, north
So
of the,
those, we did go through the planned unit development process. They're just in the county, so then there's this kind of weird nuance of who enforces if you have docks and you have a boardwalk in the water, county or city approves it, it's part of a PUD, but it's in the county. There's some issues with enforcement from police's standpoint and from fire. So
So
there's a
does
lot of
this-
value in having it in the city with the NW zoning.
so this fixes that.
That, it does,
Okay.
that's correct.
And if the folks up in Mill River at the far end of the, wanted to put in docks, they would go through that process too?
Correct, they'd go through the PUD process.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Hillary? Dan?
One more question, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Annexation fees.
Yes.
So we're paying annexation fees to ourselves.
What we would probably do is have the fees in there, but that developers would pay in the future. So that's been a common practice of, like, the Washington Trust property that now River's Edge owns. So they paid a portion, I believe, and the rest of them were deferred till development. And so that's something, annexation agreements, there's a lot of flexibility with how we draft those, but that's something that we could certainly, it makes more financial sense to pass that along to whomever develops the site, rather than the city paying for it with the agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like to pay for it up front?
You're speaking to me as a member of an organization.
You'd be taking it
I
from the
just-
right pocket and putting it in the left.
And that was basically what I was thinking, was why would we charge ourselves that if we're just, journaling money around?
It makes more sense to have the future developers pay for it, and then that helps with all of our financial.
And that's part of the annexation agreement would stipulate that.
Correct. So
Okey-doke.
basically, the annexation agreement, we would enter into that, but then it goes to any future assigns, designees, and basically anyone who buys property and develops it. They would all be bound by the same rules of the agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Kiki?
So that, Chet's question was my question, so that was great. I just want to make sure I have this part clear. The owner of part of what we're annexing in under the navigable water is not the city. They would still retain their riparian rights, so they could still access the water from the land they own, but through their annexation agreement and PUD, because we have the navigable water in place, what happens on that water in front of the property they own can be governed by planning and zoning when it comes through that process.
That's correct.
Okay.
And the Department of Lands would still retain any of the jurisdiction for the riverbed. So they still would be involved in any of the dock permits.
Any other questions for Hillary? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So at this
Mayor,
time,
Whit-
oh, go ahead,
Whitmer, I
Mike.
might make a comment in general. This is a really unusual deal that you guys are doing, and the thing that gives you ultimate control is you own the property. So unlike most things that come to you, it's somebody else that owns the property, and they're asking you to zone it or make rules about it. You own the property. Until you convey it to somebody else, you dictate everything that happens down there. And even when you convey it, if you sell it to me, you can say, Gridley, we'll sell it to you with these restrictions, and you can put those restrictions in the deed. It can be used for this, or it can't be used for that, or it must have this, or it must have that. So it's a very unusual situation, but I would suggest that you guys remain in control and have a tremendous amount of control. You're going to do an annexation agreement with yourself. You know, you'll have the ability to change that, amend that, put whatever you want to in that. So it's different than what typically comes before you.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I'll close public testimony and look for council action.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to approve A-2-17M, prior zoning to annexation of plus or minus 48 acres from county industrial to city C-17, located at 3074 West Saltese Way. Applicant, City of Coeur d'Alene, to direct staff to negotiate an annexation agreement and to develop the necessary findings in order.
Second?
Motion and a second. Yeah, Woody, you meant to include the navigable water portion of that as well?
The Northwest Water.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry.
46,
Thanks,
okay.
Good catch.
All right, so we have that. So we have a motion and a second. Discussion, please.
Mr. Mayor?
Dan?
I'd also like to see in this the adoption of the conclusion and decision, the 17 points that were made by the Planning Commission, which I think council should look those over and see what they say, because I believe, Hillary, would those automatically be included, or should we stipulate that they're going to be included in the motion?
I thought they were coming forward.
It would be helpful if you provided clarification.
It's automatically?
No, it'd be helpful if you just clarified that you.
Yes, let us clarify then. So
Yes.
I'd like to amend the motion so that we can include those 17 items that are listed in your packet, among which is that the Planning Commission would recommend that the annexation agreement include a provision that the shoreline remain in public ownership, talks about some setbacks, shoreline ordinance, some of the items that I mentioned earlier. I think these are all good points. These are items that we have discussed. And I think this would also reassure the community that we do have their best interests in mind. So I'd like to make a motion to add those items. Have Woody modify his
Would you
motion.
modify your motion to include those 17?
Yes.
And Kiki,
And
would you?
second it.
And so we've got that.
Thank you.
Good, okay. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Evans? Yes. Miller?
Yes.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yep.
English?
Yes.
Eddinger?
Yes.
Motion carried. And action on the second part of this. Do we need other action on this?
I'd
Oh,
like
yes.
to move to dispense with the rule and read Council Bill 181024 once by title only.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Renata, if you could read the title, please.
Council Bill 18-1024, an ordinance annexing to and declaring to be a part of the City of Coeur d'Alene, Kootenai County, Idaho, specifically describe portions of Section 10, Township 50 North, Range 4 West, Boise Meridian, and specifically describe portions of the Spokane River. Zoning such specifically described property hereby annexed as C-17 and NW, repealing all ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing a severability clause, and providing for publication of a summary of this ordinance and an effective date hereof.
Roll call, please.
Miller?
Yes.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yep.
English?
Yes.
Eddinger?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Motion carried. Final part.
Move to adopt Council Bill 18-1024.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Miller,
Yes?
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin,
Yep.
English,
Yes.
Eddinger,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you, Hillary, and thank you, Chet, for being such a great advocate of the river and keeping that public. You've done a lot of work, a lot of thinking on this. And thank your wife for putting up with you, too.
How come people always say that?
All right, we'll move on to our final piece of business tonight. We have the creation of fees for the Coeur d'Alene Avenue parking structure, and Troy has a report for us.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The City of Coeur d'Alene, in partnership with Ignite, is nearing the completion of the Coeur d'Alene Avenue parking garage. We are here tonight to set the fees for that brand-new facility. We need to hold a public hearing because there are no fees for that current location, and that would be an increase of 5% because there are no fees there. Your parking commission has worked on this and reviewed it, and we unanimously recommend the fees that we have put in the paper and we bring before you tonight. They did that on the 3rd of October. The parking commission is going to review all the fees for the city-owned lots, and the philosophy on this new parking garage is based on what the consultants share with us. And that's a parking garage is the least liked way in which for the public to go park. So we are recommending to you that you provide 2 hours of free parking in this brand new facility, and after that, it's $1 per hour. The goal here would be, again, we provide on-street parking 2 hours free, and we want the circulation, so there is no additional hours that you pay for. This would be an option for people to move over into the garage. This facility has the ground level floor, which you would access off 3rd Street, is secured parking. That's 24/7 secured parking. It will have its own entrance, and we are proposing a $75 per month fee. And with that, the key fob goes along so that you can access. We're asking for a security deposit of $50. We are going to propose to you that the monthly parking permits stay just like they are and have been. There's a 5-day pass if someone is not able to take advantage of our downtown association. That means that you can have a 5-day pass, pay $20 for the whole month. If you work downtown and prescribe to the way in which the Downtown Association issues passes, it's only $15 per month in this facility. And if someone wants to have a 7-day pass in the parking garage, we propose it to be $35 per month. You also have event parking. It is currently $7. We're proposing to increase that fee to $10. In this situation, you also have leased out the publicly owned spaces to the chamber. They have charged $20, but that's not a fee that you set. I just bring it forward because you've done that in the past, and it can be confusing if you look at this and say that 4th of July is $10. Well, that's what the parking fund receives for leasing out those spaces, and we've just entered into an agreement with the chamber for many years now. So the philosophy with this is to get as many people as we can in there, provide them very reasonable parking. It's covered. It's looking like a very great structure. And I would stand for any questions you may have, or I don't have anybody signed up.
Woody?
So you're saying that the chamber will still get this new parking garage on the 4th of July, the holiday stuff?
If you would choose to lease it to them.
Okay, like we do everything else?
Correct.
Okay. But we still get our $10.
Correct.
Okay. On secured no limit, is there a limit on that? So for $75 a month, I have a classic car, I want to put it in there and cover it and leave it there for 7-8 months before I can drive it in the summer.
You can do it.
Okay. Finally found a place to park my boat. I don't have a boat. I don't have a boat.
Awesome. Did you just give people ideas?
I don't know. I'm just trying to understand this. I don't have a boat.
It needs to fit in the stall.
It fit in a garage.
Yes.
You have to get it in the door.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Troy, is this So I guess the bottom part, the secure part's gonna be gated. Like there's a little robot arm there that goes up and down?
It's actually a garage door.
It's a garage door, cool.
Secure.
What about the rest of it? How is the parking going to be enforced in the rest of the facility?
It will be a gate coming in off of Coeur d'Alene Avenue for the parking that is not in the secured area. There'll be a gate. You can pay by phone. You can take the ticket and pay when you exit.
Cool, I like that. How do these fees compare to everywhere else downtown, our other lots?
Right now, these are very comparable to your other lots.
So the same?
Well, Independence Point is more expensive.
Yeah.
We are attempting to move away from the 2-hour parking free, and we will see if we can bring that forward to you at McEwen. It had a high volume this year. So this is pretty much what McEwen is, except McEwen is $3 on the 3rd hour.
Ooh. And so what's the point of collecting these fees? This thing's paid for, Urban Renewal bought it. Are we trying to pay it back?
We are trying to maintain this $7 million structure and receive some benefit to the parking fund. I would also suggest that parking is a great attribute to the parks, and to date, we're not being able to charge for any of the users that are visiting our parks, but they may park, and we need to maintain all this green space that this city has invested in. So I see this as a maintenance way to take care of not only parking, but the accompanying parks that people are visiting.
So what's the anticipated revenue from this facility?
I would, depends on the weather, if I can be an attorney-like here and say that's one of the biggest variables. We are hoping for, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year.
Okay. And that's based on what?
Number of car parks, what we've seen McEwen dial up to.
Uh-huh. Okay. So the purpose of the $90,000 a year is not to pay back this facility, but it's to fund its maintenance. And to fund our parks.
And whatever you would choose to do. I just bring that up as a suggestion based on what it is we've continued to do with adding green space, the maintenance thereof.
And based on the projected traffic of it and subscriptions, you think we'll rake in 90,000 in revenue, we'll generate 90,000 in revenue?
Yeah, we believe that there's demand, especially in the summertime. This summer was a solid year. We need to get rid of a little bit of smoke in August if I can help the parking program with better weather. We also are excited to provide this so that our workers, which thanks to the way in which we enforce that and our partnership with the Downtown Association, that $15 per month parking pass for worker bees has been very, very well received.
Okay, and so if the projected revenue, so we'll be able to see this in the financials next year. So projected revenue, we'll be able to see if it's meeting its needs, and then if it's not, we could adjust the rates?
Absolutely
Okay.
correct.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Troy? Dan?
What about the 5 and 7 day? I guess I should know, but I didn't realize. Is it Monday through Friday or any 5 days out of the 7? How does that thing work?
Well, the 7's pretty straightforward. You can park there anytime. The 5 has typically been done for the Monday through Friday, but we do have some folks that work weekends. So the goal there is to basically clarify that it's a design for those that are downtown working on 5 days versus someone that's here for the summer and may want that 7-day pass so they can be in and out and almost use it as their own parking space.
Any other questions for Troy? Oh, Ron?
What about parking down by the carousel and the skate plaza?
Well, that has become a topic now that the skate park has opened up, and our parking commission is going to take that on and look at what the best way is to handle that new parking area and the new number of folks that are visiting, not only the carousel, but the Memorial Field and the skate park. So it has been a topic of conversation as recent as 3:30 this afternoon, I believe, Council President and I were speaking on that subject. So our Parking Commission is going to look at all of that. They're also going to look at the campus that we're on right now with the library and City Hall. So we plan to do that in the off-season since we are getting shorter days and cooling down. So I'll get back to you on that in early 2019.
Okay. Kiki?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to commend the Parking Commission on especially focusing on keeping it inexpensive for workers downtown to park there on a monthly basis. I think that's really important, and I'm glad they focused on that. Then I'm wondering, is the warning program that we have for first-time out-of-towners and the enforcement the same as it is on the streets, the same program through Diamond that we have for street parking in the garage?
So a warning
Policy-wise.
ticket for parking in the garage?
I don't think, there won't be any tickets in the garage
Right.
because you'll come
Just
in,
a fee.
you'll come in, you'll take a ticket, to get out, you have to pay. Yeah, so there won't be a car or someone going around the garage, and to get out, you're gonna have
Right.
to pay.
Okay.
Well, probably only enforcement will be with the ADA spaces to make sure that they're compliant with stating that they have the right tag to put in their windows.
So the pass goes through the same kiosk if they have a pass? It's not a monitored thing?
Right.
Okay.
This will be unmanned parking structure.
Okay.
Any other questions for Troy? Thank you, Troy. And this is a public hearing, so I will open up the testimony for that. I don't have anyone on the list. Anyone wishing to testify in the audience? Seeing none, I will close the public testimony portion of that and look for council action. Not everybody at once.
Well, I would be happy to move to approve Resolution 18057, approving fees for the Coeur d'Alene Avenue parking facility.
Second.
Doing the math.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? Roll call, please, Renata.
McEvers?
Oh, 250? I'm sorry, yes.
Kuchen?
I'm
Yeah.
drifting here.
English?
Yes?
Eddinger?
Yep.
Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
What do you